Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our Board of Health meeting. This is meeting number 15 of the Board of Health for this term of council. For those of us in the room here, the screen at the back there tells you what the real-time updates are, what we voted on, what we amended, what we didn't amend, and where we are on the agenda and what's coming up next. You can also follow the agenda and the debate on your computer, tablet, or smartphone at www.toronto.ca/council. If you leave here and you're down in the cafeteria and you just don't want to miss us. The Board of Health gratefully acknowledges it is meeting on the traditional lands of the Mississaugas of the New Credit First Nation, the Haudenosaunee of the Huron-Wendat, and home to many diverse Indigenous peoples. Before we get started, we have a little presentation related to us winning an award from the Milan Urban Food Policy Pact that we won in competition, not in competition, but with 120 other cities that have signed the Milan Urban Poverty Pact. And we along with Vancouver, received 2 of the 5 awards that they gave out. On October 16, 2016, World Food Day, mayors and delegates of signatory cities across the world met at Food and Agriculture Organization headquarters in Rome for the 2nd annual Milan Urban Food Policy Pact Summit and to present the first Milan Pact Awards. City of Toronto, our award was for the Food Reach Procurement Project, described in the Food Strategy Report that you have before us, so we're going to be talking about soon, and under the Grab Some Good brand. Ambassador McGovern, who is the Canadian ambassador to Italy, accepted the award on behalf of the Mayor and City Council. He reported that the event underscored the dynamism and commitment of local authorities in tackling the challenges related to urban food security and nutrition, and that us, Toronto, along with Vancouver, were award winners, and it really caused people to stand up and notice that we're doing something is cooking well, pun intended, in Toronto. So this initiative is an excellent example of city, community, and private sector collaboration to improve health access to good food to some of the most vulnerable in our city. So we have a video on this, and I think it shows something to celebrate for us, and we can see it now.
In Toronto, over 300,000 people are fed by more than 1,000 community agencies, but daily fluctuations in food prices, unpredictable donations, access wholesale prices threaten the ability of these agencies to serve good, healthy food. In the past 5 years, food prices increased by 18%. In 7 years, food bank dependency increased by 12%. 1/8 of Toronto households are food insecure, and the problem is getting worse.
Three years ago, there was nowhere that I could actually get all of the food in one place. That was before Food Reach. Food Reach was a solution. It allowed us to, in fact, understand what the demand was, when we could have it delivered, how fresh it could be, as well as the cost. We could get it at a wholesale price, if not better. So Food Reach solved a huge number of the challenges that we had up until that time.
So, what is Food Reach? It's an online portal that gives agencies and student nutrition programs the power of bulk buying nutritious food at wholesale prices. It's also an online space that strengthens the sector's resilience through sharing, learning, and collaborating. The result? Marginalized groups see increased food security, improved nutritional quality, increased community ownership over food procurement, and also collaboration between community agencies, student nutrition programs, city government, and private sector partners. What's proved most attractive about Food Reach? $50 minimum order with next day delivery, food is sourced locally whenever possible, and fresh.
The biggest benefit that we have noticed since working with Food Reach has been the ability to not only order online, you don't have the anxiety that comes with leaving an order by voicemail over the phone and hoping that someone is going to pick it up before the order deadline. Food Reach is dealing with a supplier that doesn't close over the holidays. That's an issue that we've had with other suppliers in the past. Placing an order online and using the shopping cart, it allows you to see how much, what your order total is, and it allows you to add and remove items really easily, so that you can not exceed your monthly budget. So yeah, I mean, above and beyond the fact that Food Reach, it makes the ordering process quite easy for us from week to week. It represents the interests of the agencies who are taking part in it. That feels really good.
And that's why we won the award, right? Was it that, or was it also Grab Some Good, or together? It was this piece. Great. So is Barbara Emanuel here? Barbara Emanuel is here, Rachel Gray is here, Jessica Reeve is here, and I know Food Policy Council, someone on the outside, Barbara Emanuel on the inside. Stand up and let us acknowledge you with an applause. Great. Okay, so we can get on to the business of the Board of Health. Are there any declarations of interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act? Seeing none. Confirmation of minutes, September 30th, 2016. Moved by Elisa. All in favor? Opposed of any? That's carried. We'll go through the agenda. Food strategy update. There is an additional motion there that, are there any holds? Let me ask first of all. I'll hold it for the purpose of adding a motion that needs to be added on continuing its good work. 15.2, Toronto Food Policy Council Annual Report. There's also an added motion there. Is that right, Nancy? Yes. Okay. Is it quick? Yes. Yeah, great, okay. Technical amendment. And the reason for this amendment is to be able for us to see that the membership has changed a little bit. And current members, to appoint members. Can you get it on there? Board of Health appoint the individuals named as new members, current members being recommended for a second term, and honorary members in attachment 1. Okay, with that amendment, and with thanks to Toronto Food Policies Council and their good work, all in favor, opposed of any, that's carried. 2 is done. Number 3, good report, housing and health, unlocking opportunity. Is there a presentation on that?
Yeah, and 2 deputies.
Okay, presentation in depth, so we'll hold that. And the same with number 4. There is certainly a two deputants there, so we'll hold that for that purpose. Number 5, and number 4 was preventing injuries from wintertime slips and falls in Toronto. Number 5 is the Toronto Urban Health Fund recommendations for the changes to the 2017 review panel terms of reference. Fairly technical. Okay, moved by Ashna Bowery. All in favor, opposed if any, that's carried. 15.6 is the Toronto Public Health 2017 to 2026 capital budget and plan request. 1-year budget, 10-year plan. We need to hold it because there's a present, no, not on the capital. Capital's pretty straightforward. We're good? Okay, all in favor, moved by the Vice Chair, Councillor Doucette. All in favor, opposed, abstaining, that's carried. And 15.7 is the Toronto Public Health 2017 operating budget request. Okay, hold that. There's also a presentation, and there's a public portion and a private portion. So we're going to do that right at the end to make sure that we clear the room and not have to have everyone wait outside. Okay, so we are on 15.1. Oh, no, we can go right to Deb's. Actually, we can go with 15.1 because it's a fairly quick motion.
Yes.
So, Madam Medical Officer of Health, this allows the program to continue, and because there's all these agreements that we have to have with other stakeholders, it asks that, it allows you to basically continue until 2018 to do the evaluation and so on, correct? So nothing too onerous. Any debate on this? Okay, all in favor, opposed of any, that's carried. We've just done all the food stuff, just so you know. We're a very efficient meeting here. Okay, so we're on 15.3, Housing and Health, Unlocking Opportunity. We have a presentation, and we also have deputants. We'll start, though, with the presentation. We have two deputants, Heather McGregor and Derek Moran. So first presentation, Dr. Yaffe.
Good afternoon, everybody. Affordable, quality, and stable housing is important for everyone's health and well-being, and for building healthy and inclusive communities. Addressing affordable housing issues is a key priority for all three orders of government in Canada. This is an opportune time to highlight the importance of investing in affordable, good quality, stable housing to promote health and reduce health inequities. The link between housing and health is not a new one. During his tenure as Toronto's Medical Officer of Health in the early 1900s, Dr. Charles Hastings released a seminal report that highlighted the extent of poor housing conditions, such as inadequate, unsanitary housing, overcrowding, poor ventilation, and he called these conditions a menace to public health. His commitment and leadership on this issue resulted in widespread reforms to housing, such as demolishing substandard housing, stricter housing standards, and social housing projects. The current housing situation in Toronto is a significant public health issue. There are many connections between housing and health. As we all know, there are rising house prices and rents, declining incomes, inadequate social assistance rates, low vacancy rates, insufficient supply of affordable and supportive housing despite the high demand, and the aging private rental and social housing stock. Just some of the challenges that are facing Toronto that have implications for our health. As we all know, housing is a social determinant of health. Research and lived experience have demonstrated there are three key dimensions of housing that are important for health, and they are affordability, quality, and that's quality both of the individual dwelling and of the neighborhood, and lastly, stability or security of the housing. These have all been linked with better physical and mental health, reduced risk factors for poor health, reduced health service use, and hence reduced cost to the healthcare system, and improvement to factors known to impact health. Affordable housing is a health equity issue. Our housing situation has become been called a social and economic problem, but it is a health equity issue as well. And health inequities are preventable, and unjust differences in health or its determinants that are experienced by certain population groups. And they arise from social conditions in which people are born, grow, live, work, and age. So the groups listed on this slide are more likely to experience social and economic inequities, such as poverty, and as a result are at greater risk of experiencing homelessness and housing instability with their related health impact. Spending too much on housing and its related expenses, such as utilities, can create hardship and leave very little money left over for basic elements of a healthy life, such as food, medications, recreational activities. Studies have found that housing unaffordability is significantly associated with various mental and physical health problems, including hypertension, arthritis, various mental health issues, and risk factors for poor health, and not following healthcare advice due to cost. Household energy insecurity, which is when a disproportionate burden of electricity, natural gas, and other utility costs on your household income, can result in extreme home temperatures, hazardous heating alternatives, threat of utility disconnection, and utility arrears. And research has found significant links between energy insecurity and health-related behaviors and outcomes across all ages, ranging from infants showing increased developmental concerns, increased emergency room visits, all the way to adolescents, adults, poor mental health. We can learn a lot about the impacts of homelessness and housing instability on people's health from people with lived experience of these issues. John, and these are all pseudonyms, is a single man in his 50s who owns his childhood home, mortgage-free with his brother. He and his brother have been forced to sell their home because they can no longer pay for house-related expenses. Chronic intergenerational poverty, the loss of pooled income as a result of his parents' deaths and his brother's unemployment, has led to the situation that they are in today. John speaks about the difficult trade-off they had to make between electricity and gas because of poverty and affordability issues.
The house became cold during the winter, but with the use of space heaters, only the places where we slept was kept warm. So we kind of figured it out. We could not afford both gas and electricity. We had to choose one or the other. And because we use electricity for other things like lighting, we chose electricity. And so we've been living like that since that time. It's because we do not have the income. That affected our mental health. We were at each other's throats.
When housing costs are high, incomes are inadequate, or affordable housing is in limited supply, people's housing and neighborhood choices are obviously limited. As a result, they may end up living in a poor quality housing, exposing them to factors associated with poor health, and also neighborhoods with less access to factors important for health, like safety, social cohesion, green space, access to services. There is strong evidence that physical, chemical, or biological exposures in the home can have adverse health effects, and it is associated with emotional and behavioral problems in children as well. Social, economical, and physical features of neighborhoods have been linked to health-related behaviors and outcomes, and you can see them listed here in this slide. Ashley is a young single mother of a toddler who moved into subsidized housing when she was 17 and pregnant. She left her grandparents' home due to abuse. She moved around at least 16 times in the last 5 years before going to her current place. Although she says the place is better than where she lived before, she has had a number of issues with disrepair, mold, and past infestations in her home, and she describes where she lives as a bad neighborhood. She talks about the impact that the neighborhood has on her mental health and how it limits activities with her son, which are important for healthy child development.
Yeah, it stresses me out, and like a lot of the people like in this area, they drink all day and they're known for doing drugs, and they harass me every time I go out, especially when I'm with my son. They're always like, come here, stay with me, and I'm like, no, like I'm trying to go, and they'll stop me. They won't let me leave, and like that gives me anxiety. Like I have bad anxiety, and they don't like they won't stop bothering me, and I hate like taking out. Like I strap him. Like he can walk perfectly fine by himself, but I don't want him walking in this area because people here are mental, and people try to like coax him into coming with him a lot. And so that makes me have really bad anxiety, and that just makes me uncomfortable. There's always like people fighting outside. There's been shootings in the area, and it's just like great place for kids.
Housing that is unaffordable, insecure, poor quality, and unsuitable can threaten housing stability and lead to overcrowding, frequent moving, evictions, homelessness, all of which negatively impact health. Violence and abuse in the home, chronic health conditions, and mental health and substance use issues can also impact housing stability and ultimately may lead to homelessness. Studies have found links between these housing issues and physical and mental health, risk factors for poor health, increased risk of death, and barriers to healthcare access. Recent research of PACT has demonstrated there is no safe level of homelessness for children. And the earlier and longer a child experiences homelessness, the greater the cumulative toll of negative health outcomes, which can have lifelong effects on the child, the family, and the community. Bindu is a single mother of 3 children who works in a part-time, low-wage job and lives in private market rental housing. She's separated from her husband because of abuse, and she has experienced housing instability ever since, moving 6 times in the last 5 years. Her severe housing instability has had major impacts on her and her children. She's unsure if she will be able to stay in her current place as the owner is moving back in. Bindu speaks about the mental health impact of being evicted because of utility arrears.
Last time, when they asked me to evict, I was fed up, and I tried to kill myself, honestly. I was fed up with moving, and I was thinking, what will happen to the kids if I did something wrong to me? And then I was in depression. I understand I was not in a good, right thinking process. But so if there's no help, if there's no one to tell, what would I do? So I don't know.
Addressing housing issues requires a collective effort from all orders of government and long-term investments that focus on the upstream causes of housing instability and homelessness. Research has found positive impacts on the health of interventions such as reducing shelter costs through subsidized housing and housing allowances, improving housing conditions in neighborhoods through revitalization and relocation initiatives, providing stable and permanent housing with supports, and focusing on preventing homelessness, particularly in the early years. To promote good health for residents and reduce health inequities, new policies and new program interventions are needed to increase the supply and support the repair and maintenance of affordable, supportive, and accessible housing, provide adequate income, financial assistance, and quality employment so people are not forced to make the difficult choices between paying the rent, paying for food, utilities, and other elements of a healthy life. We need to tackle discrimination within the housing system, and we need to prevent homelessness in a child's early years through investments in mental health supports and violence prevention. I would like to take this opportunity to thank all the people who shared their stories with us at Toronto Public Health. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Yaffe. We have 2 deputants, so maybe we'll hold back on questions of staff until we hear from the deputants. Our first deputant is Heather McGregor. Welcome.
you.
CEO, president, or whatever your title is. I know you're the big boss at YWCA.
Thank you. So thanks for the opportunity to talk to you about the connections between housing and health for women and girls in our city. So, as the councillor said, my name is Heather McGregor. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of YWCA Toronto, which is the largest multi-service women's organization in Canada. We help women escape and recover from violence, move out of poverty, and gain economic independence and access housing that is safe and affordable. We also work with young girls, building their leadership and critical thinking skills. Our association serves over 12,000 women and families annually in 32 programs across the City of Toronto. We're also one of the largest providers of housing for women and their families. Our housing portfolio includes 9 shelter and housing programs, including 2 violence against women shelters, a shelter for homeless women, a transitional housing project, and 550 units of permanent housing. We shelter and house almost 1,700 women and children annually. So today, my comments are not really addressed to the excellence of the report and the points that we that we wholeheartedly agree with, but we feel that there's a need for an explicit gender analysis of women's homelessness and housing insecurity in the report. And as I listen to it, as you listen to it, it is not explicit, the women and girls. Just 2 weeks ago, Canada's Chief Public Health Officer released a report which identified violence against women as a public health issue of global importance. It's a tragedy that every 4 days a woman is killed by a family member. It is a tragedy that Indigenous women experience disproportionately higher levels of violence. There's a strong need and moral imperative for action, and I'm sure that you would all agree with that. For women, violence is often the precursor to instability that plunges them into poverty and homelessness to seek safety. Only by using a gender lens can governments effectively recognize and respond to the unique systemic challenges facing women, particularly the connection between violence, trauma, mental health, and substance abuse. YWCA Toronto has been involved in housing consultations at the provincial and federal levels. The following are some of the key recommendations we have made. Include safety and support as key dimensions important to housing in Canada. Invest in a continuum of housing options for women based on housing readiness and specific needs, including women-only emergency shelters, transitional housing, and permanent housing options. Expand access to housing options by and for Indigenous women with traditional healing programs. Develop a coordinated plan to ensure effective support for tenants with complex needs, including strengthening supportive housing and funding trauma-informed mental health programs. Looking at Toronto's housing context, we cannot ignore the impact of poverty on women's homelessness, housing insecurity, and health. In every category, Indigenous women, immigrant and refugee women, senior women, women's poverty rates are higher than those of men. We also cannot ignore Toronto's stark divisions among neighborhoods, racial and ethnic lines in terms of economic conditions and opportunities. We must close these gaps. Poverty destroys lives, limits opportunities, and harms families and communities. As a kind of an addition to this, YWCA Toronto appeared before the Toronto Budget Committee earlier this year, and we will do so again in 2017, to urge councillors to fund adequately the city's poverty reduction strategy. We'll also join with other civic leaders in calling on councillors to look at new revenue-generating tools to fund important poverty reduction initiatives. As we all know, inaction is detrimental to the health and safety of Torontonians, especially women. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Heather. Questions, Councillor Cressy?
Thank you, Heather, for coming out. I want to zero in on Toronto specifically. You spoke about some of the recommendations at a broad level, from shelter support and tailored shelter and housing support with a gendered analysis. In Toronto, what programs are currently working well for women and girls within the broad housing sector that could be expanded if the resources were there? I want to start with what's working well.
Well, from our position and with a gender lens, I actually think that women-only housing is an important component of the whole scene. So the safety and health issues, I think there are very important. In our 550 units of permanent housing, almost, I would say 500 of those are women-only apartments. We particularly respond to women who are fleeing violence. We get a lot of referrals from violence against women shelters. So I think that is working well. Of course, what is not working well, and I have to say this, is that the housing stock is insufficient to deal with the waiting lists. And it's not just the waiting lists that are associated with women fleeing violence. Also, there's a huge waiting list on for the women who are experiencing addiction, mental health issues, and there's a specific waiting list for that. And again, I would say that they're better served in a women-only environment.
So can I just pick up on that? So on the issue of women-only permanent housing, your feedback would be that it works, but there is insufficient stock of housing. Specifically as it relates to housing with services to support people living or experiencing addictions or mental health. In this city, are those programs in place? Is there an absence of those programs from your perspective, or is it again that there are some, but they're insufficient for the need?
The latter. There are some. The YWCA is always looking for opportunities to be involved in the construction of new permanent affordable housing, but we will not do it unless there is funding to provide supports in that housing, because it is a recipe for disaster. The bricks and mortar are not enough to do it, and I would say that's where in the city it falls down. And our experience is when you provide the supports, you help the women maintain their tenancy, which is a key thing, because obviously permanent housing for all of us is important rather than emergency insecure housing.
And we talk a little bit about permanent housing, a little bit there as it relates to some of the health services on offer within housing. On the shelter side, so I understand the city opened up 2 24-hour shelters specifically for women and girls, but they were over capacity before they opened.
I'm sure we turn women away all the time. We have a 56-bed homeless shelter, women only, and we're always at capacity.
Okay. So that's all my questions. I might follow up with city staff as it relates to funding for some of our recommendations, but I'll hold those. Thank you, Heather.
Yes, I'd like to speak to that, about funding, if I could, just briefly.
I have a minute left, so would you like to speak about funding?
Well, I think particularly in the shelter component, I think that the not-for-profit community is bearing a huge responsibility and weight of the funding for emergency shelter programs in the City of Toronto. I'm not talking about violence against women's shelter, I'm talking about homeless. So the YWCA, on a budget of, I don't know, way over $1 million, actually provides to support our homeless shelter. It provides $440,000 every year to support that program. So based upon the funding formula, it is insufficient, and it relies upon someone other than government to provide what I think is a human right.
And if I could just, to close here, my time is up, but as the executive director of the YWCA, if I understood correctly there, that where governments are failing, nonprofits are stepping in to fill the gap, but in an insufficient manner because of the absence of funding.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Councillor Doucette?
Thank you very much. You touched on a topic which I think we're all interested to hear. You mentioned that the city needs to find some new revenue tools. Do you have any suggestions? I hate to put you on the spot. Would you have any suggestions?
Well, I'm not going to remember exactly the suggestions that have been put forward by community agencies, but whatever they are, I signed on to them. But I think that, ones from the past had to do with licensing of cars and, which I think is an easy one.
Vehicle
because people-
registration.
Yes.
Yes, that good one.
Yes. Well, that's one example, but I think that there may be other examples.
But you do agree that we do need to find more funding? I'm just looking at the
Yes.
report on page 5, and it's saying that one person, for a single person, the Ontario Works maximum monthly shelter allowance is $376, and yet the average market rent for just a bachelor is $937. Where do people find the difference? Do they have to panhandle? As I have a lady on my street panhandling to make up the difference. Is there anywhere else for these people to make up every month?
Well, our experience at the YWCA, we have we have some permanent housing that's not quite a bachelor apartment because it's kind of shared accommodation. It's a single room.
Right.
And the market is about 900, but we actually have rent supplements for a number of those. The women who live there are very poor because they pay a third of whatever their income is on rent, which is an enormous portion of their income. So food is a big problem for them, as well as other necessities. In our Elm Center, we have one-bedroom apartments that start at $900. We have 2 bedrooms that are about $1,100, and 3 bedrooms are about $1,300, which other YWCAs across the country think are enormous rents, but anyone who lives in Toronto realizes that they are below market.
Right.
But we're housing many, many very poor people.
Thank you very much for coming out today. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Other questions? I do have one. I understand and certainly appreciate your strong support of the report, but if I'm getting your nugget of perhaps a gentle critique, it is that a more solidly based gender equity lens should be here. So there is, and if you just go to the table of contents, there is a kind of Indigenous people's lens. There's a newcomer and immigrants, children and families, and there are some references to gender there, youth, seniors, LGBT.
No, I saw the long list.
Yeah,
But it doesn't say women specifically.
right.
On page 4, you referred in your history about December 9th, received the report on intimate partner violence against women.
Yes.
That's the kind of thing that might be in the report as well, to refer to. I guess what is in the report is a reference to pregnant women fleeing violence. But the facts are clear that poverty and homelessness and the people who live in affordable housing are overwhelmingly women. So I just think that the gender lens should be more obvious in the report.
Yes. I think you make a wise comment. Thank you very much. Anybody else? Okay, thank you, Heather.
Thank you very much.
Next is Derek Moran or Morin. Welcome, Derek.
You can ask me that revenue tool question if you want, Councillor Johnson. So we're really all here basically talking about how we're going to pay for all this, right? Okay, so I just wanted to let you all know that I attended an Access to Justice event a couple of weeks ago where one of the lawyers there leading the event for TAG, the action group, actually discussed with me about just what the phrase security of the person means in Section 7 of the Constitution and how the Supreme Court of Canada has yet to get around to definitively making a decision on just what that means in regards to economic rights of the people. So on page 33 of this report, what leaped out at me was the part where it says, "Nowhere else for me is home. That is my home. When I identify myself with my address that I've lived in since I was 2 years old. I've always feel stranger in another place always. To that last breath I take, I'll always feel that this is my home and it's being taken away from me. I can't do anything about it." And this was that John speaking about being forced to sell his childhood home due to poverty. Now, Councillor Doucette, on budget debate day a while ago, I saw you stand up and speak about holding a town hall along, I think it was with Councillor Perks, was it? Where seniors were expressing to you their fear of having to be forced to sell and lose their home if only because they can't afford the increases in property taxes anymore. I've heard the same thing before at Councillor Matlow's town hall in the past, same sort of thing at Marco Mendicino's budget town hall where Mike Cole, you were there, Councillor Greb, went into a detailed story explaining how people who had spent their whole lives working and are now unbelievably retired and don't have enough money at this point in their life to eat because it means choosing between feeding themselves or paying the mortgage they still have on their house. Same thing came up at Councillor Greb's last budget town hall to a lesser extent. Councillor Greb asked people to tell her on what they thought about the proposed tax increases. Some people said no, some people actually said yes, they wouldn't mind as long as they got value for the increase. And then it was my turn. What I said was, it doesn't matter if there's a tax increase or not, it's a moot point to begin with, as the federal crown provides the funds to any bill from the City of Toronto with this remittance here. It's a credit item. Josie Levita even admitted to me this. The lady from the city, Councillor Greb had there to explain stuff to everyone when I said this, Judy Skinner, I think it was, had a huge grin on her face while I was talking about this. Councillor Greb even almost knocked me off my chair when she suggested me that I explain to people what I was talking about, and I did, but you know what? Everyone just looked at me like I was from another planet. But the best part was when she explained to the audience that, oh, this is Derek. And just to let you all know, he's being engaged in an ongoing dialogue about this with Chief Financial Officer for the city, Rob Rossini, which was very diplomatic on your part. What she should have said, or what I would have said is, just to let you all know, Derek here has been trying to get across to our Chief Financial Officer, Rob Rossini at the city, that if Treasurer Mike St. Amand isn't going to let people use this remittance attached to the bottom of every bill the City of Toronto provides to set off the debt with funds ultimately from the security of the person, the Constitution even says we all have the right to and the right not to be deprived thereof, then that's fraud. So what we really need to do right now is just to grab all our pitchforks, stomp up to Mike St. Amand's office and say, hey man, hey buddy boy, we're going to report you. Remember what I said at Marco Mendicino's? Somebody's got to go to jail. I spoke to Mike St. Amand just before Government Executive Committee. Oh no, Derek, you can't pay a bill like that. That's just not the way it's done. You know that. And it was like he was trying to Jedi mind trick me. Oh, you know that. No, I know what Josie Levita told me. This is a credit item, but it's a benefit, a credit item that's supposed to go to the benefit of the City of Toronto. It's under like the laws of usufruct because, as Fiona Murray explained to me at the Code of Consultation last year, you guys operate under civil law, but here in reality, Ontario is a common law jurisdiction where the rules of equity apply also. So before I run out of time, so I'm going to make another deputation. I appoint you, Dr. Barbara Yaffe, to act as a trustee for me in this matter with the instructions to ask Federal Finance Minister Bill Morneau this one simple question. Can the people use funds from the security of the person they have to pay for housing, shelter, yes or no? If he says no, then, doctor, again, you are to report to the appropriate government or regulatory agency this serious public health issue, and it should make you feel good knowing that you'll be doing this for the greater societal good. I respectfully direct you to do this, Dr. Barbara Raffi, and I demand that you do this. Long live Queen Elizabeth Windsor. Any objections?
Thank you very much, Derek. Are there any questions? Seeing none, we'll say thank you.
Doesn't Councillor Grab have a question, I think?
She looks pretty happy.
She knows what I'm talking about anyways.
She does, she does.
She's the best councillor here.
We're here to hear you. We agree.
Well, then do something about it. Just let's not talk about it.
We agree that she's the best counselor here. Tied with many others, tied with every other counselor on this table. Okay, that's it for the deputations. We'll take it into staff, questions of staff. Are there any questions of staff? Councillor Doucette.
Thank you very much for this full report. I had trouble reading this because of the content. Can you tell me how much does the province provide to the city to help us repair and maintain the social housing stock the city has right now? It's sort of a budgetary question, I apologize, but.
I'm not sure, but I'm going to refer this to, I believe Laurel Rain is here from SSHA. I don't know if you'll be able to answer this. There may all be somebody here from Affordable Housing Office, is there? Anyway, thank you, Laurel.
I'm not budget staff, so I don't have an exact dollar figure, but we have received some investment of funds through recent announcements, federal budget announcements, but it's not sufficient, if that answers your question.
Is this one-time funding, or is this going to be ongoing funding?
Correct, it's one-time funding.
And my same question, would you know what the federal government has given us to help with our, I think it's $1 billion in repairs and maintenance needed to our social housing stock?
It's the same funding, one-time occasional funding for that.
So year to year, neither of the other levels of government give us consistent funding, which we know we can rely on to put into our budget for our repairs.
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions? Councillor Chrissy.
Thank you. I just want to follow up to the Acting Medical Officer of Health on the recommendations. And so the question would be, why is there no recommendation calling on the City of Toronto to increase the amount of money it puts into the housing sector, be it shelter support, transitional housing, or permanent housing, all in the affordable lens?
I'm going to refer this to Monica Campbell.
We worked with Shelter Housing and with Shelter Support and Housing Administration to develop these recommendations, but that was not one of the recommendations that we actually considered.
Okay. So I guess let me put it this way. In the context of developing the report, we found that, did you find that the current housing system is under strain within the City of Toronto, be it occupancy levels within the shelter system or increased supports or the availability of affordable housing?
Of course.
Okay. So if a motion were to be moved calling on the city to invest more, it would not be out of line with the findings in this report. It simply wasn't a recommendation that staff decided to make. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Other questions to speak? I can start. Do you want to start? Okay, Councillor Doucette.
I have a motion, please. Basically, the motion is adding to the recommendation number 1. I want to add a C that we tell the federal government to provide funding for repairs and maintenance for the City of Toronto's social housing stock. And the second part is on number 6, where we're forwarding this report to people. I want to send it to the Mayor's Task Force on Toronto Community Housing. I wanted to send it to our Poverty Reduction Strategy Committee, but I think they've been disbanded because we now have a strategy. And I wanted to send this to Budget Committee because when I was reading this report, I know we need more funding. And in fact, I was quite disturbed by item 2C, commending the Ontario Minister of Housing for funding for repairs, maintenance of social housing stock. If I had my way, I'd take that out, because I don't feel either level of government have come forward and helped us when we need funding to maintain and repair our housing stock. Right now, Toronto Housing is working on 3 projects. I bring this up quite frequently around this table. It's called a RESET program. The RESET program is for 3 different projects in the city. It involves 881 units, which is over 2,500 residents. This program would go in and do basic, and I mean basic maintenance, new windows, new doors, new roofs, stop leaks coming into these units, move their boilers so they're more efficient, put the garbage in the right place so everyone can get the garbage where it's meant to go, plus add some programming. Now, if we are asked to make a 2.6% cut to our budget for housing, these 3 programs are not moving forward. In reports, you also see that if we don't repair and maintain the housing stock we have now, in several years we're going to be closing them. People will not be able to live in these deplorable conditions they're living in now. So I get upset, to be honest, when we commend other levels of government for doing things, when what we also need, we don't need talk, we don't need reports, we need money. So this does upset me. The report is very good. One of my questions today is, if you're receiving $376 and a bachelor apartment is $937, where do you find that money? You probably don't, which is why we're having to open up more homeless shelters. I spent the summer working with my community and the community to the north of me, working on how to open a 100-bed men's 24-hour emergency shelter. The report came back that we're opening up a 50-bed men's emergency shelter because the community was concerned, in some respects, for having 100 men move into their neighborhood. We shouldn't be needing 100 men's shelters being opened in this day and age. We should be building and maintaining more affordable housing. So as I say, I got a bit upset. I was reading this yesterday afternoon, and I read the reports, the stories from residents, and it irked me. It got me really upset. So I want to thank you for this report, but I truly believe it's all levels of government who should be doing something, not just municipal government, because yes, we do need other revenue tools. Yes, we do have to put property taxes up, but please remember that there are some programs the city provides to seniors who cannot afford the property tax increase. A lot of residents in my ward are seniors. They are property rich and cash poor. I'm also looking at programs with some seniors who would like to buy a big building and make it into 5 different units, where they can look after each other and help each other out. I'm working with planning on something like this now. So maybe the person can't afford to run their big house, but they can afford to live together happily and help each other when necessary. So there's lots of options we got down the road. I know I'm going off on a different tangent, I do apologize, but we need to provide every resident of this city not just a roof over their head, but a place they can call home. They feel comfortable living there. They have a front door of their own. That may help them be able to move on in their lives, which will help them get a job, which will help them be healthier people. So I know you didn't put my clock on. Thank you very much. And I wish I could have done more on this motion, but we will definitely be talking about this at budget time. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Doucette, sorry I didn't put the clock on, maybe not. Is Councillor Cressy's motion ready? Okay, do you want to speak? Is there anyone
Thank you,
else, by
Mr.
the
Chair, and thank you to the deputants who came out. I have a motion, if it could be put up, that the Board of Health urge City Council to increase funding for shelters, transitional housing, and permanent affordable housing in the 2017 operating and capital budget process. I understand that our chair, Councillor Mihevc, also has a motion that will speak specifically to housing opportunities and supports with a gendered lens. I think it's worth reiterating, as many of us are working downtown, or downtown here today for the meeting, that when you look outside and you see the rate in which our city is booming and growing, you don't have to look much farther than all the condo towers and the cranes in the skies. While we're booming, we are also failing. And there is no better example of that failure as a city than in the housing context. That the fact that we sit here today and the United Way says that we are the inequality capital of Canada, that poverty is growing at a faster and more pronounced rate in Toronto than any other city in Canada, is a sign of failure. That the Children's Aid Foundation says that 29% of young people are living in poverty is a sign of failure, and that poverty is now racialized and gendered. And when you look at housing, as this report speaks about, in the city of Toronto, 98,000 families on the waiting list for affordable housing, to say nothing of the 150,000 families living in affordable housing, which is substandard. 16,000 individuals used our shelter system last year, and our shelter system is over capacity. It's at 95% occupancy right now, and it should be below 90%. And so housing may be spoken of as a human right, but that's not the case in this city. But what I like and really appreciate about this report and want to commend staff is that when we speak about housing, it's not just about housing as a human right and providing dignity to people in where they live. It's about opportunity. It is about looking and seeing housing as an opportunity to improve health and the quality of health for people. It's about seeing housing as an opportunity to spur economic development and create jobs. It's about seeing housing as part of the solution to the challenges and poverty that faces our city, as opposed to yet another roadblock or obstacle we have to overcome. And so in 2017, yes, the other levels of government need to step up. They have let us down for too long. Let's be hopeful that the funds, sustainable ongoing funds, not one-time funds, are coming. But the City of Toronto has a role to play. You cannot square two heads with, on the one hand, tell Shelter Support and Housing Administration and the Affordable Housing Office, cut your budget by 2.6%, and then on the other hand say housing is a priority. It's either a priority and you invest in it, or it is not. You cannot have both things at the same time, and that's why this motion speaks to City Council in our upcoming budget process, which is going to be a lot of fun. We're all looking forward to it, that we invest in the range of short-term, temporary, transitional, and permanent housing opportunities that Torontonians need and require. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cressy. I'll just add a motion and some comments. Following up on the first deputant, to add a clause under 5E, I think that's the best place that it fits, to start to include a gender equity lens. I know it's hard to read my writing. To the inclusion of a gender equity lens in No, in its analyses and action plans, without an apostrophe S. And lens, yes. Sorry. Lens, not less, yes. Sorry, my bad doctors like writing. But as they're fixing it, let me just say a few points. First, I do think it's an excellent report. I think staff took a real kind of healthy cities approach to this. Really going up the river and saying, okay, this has health impacts, so let's go up the river and find out what those impacts could be. This is obviously not something that traditionally public health gets into. Maybe it has or dabbled in it, but here it's taking the issue on front and center because it is something that at the end of the day impacts public health. I also appreciated the use of primary voices of folks who were experiencing housing shortages and homelessness. I think that's methodologically, I think that's a real good way to be writing these reports. One of the questions that and maybe this is not a critique, but a gentle encouragement. If we are going to, and I've said this in other areas as well, if we are going to start writing these kinds of reports, which I think we should be, and I very strongly support that we do that, the question that I was asking is, what is the difference between this report coming here and, say, a similar report going to the Affordable Housing Committee? Maybe not that much. And maybe what we need to do as public health is really more strongly articulate why we as public health advocates are entering this field. And maybe it's around life expectancy. Maybe it's around savings from hospital emergency visits. Maybe it's around poor nutrition, malnourishment, obesity, just poor nutrition. Maybe it's around violence, and we have some goals around that. Maybe it's around mental health improvements. Like really developing some metrics and some tools so that we enter those conversations on solid public health grounds, and that no one can challenge us as to why we're making the points that we're making. That would be my kind of gentle encouragement as we do more of these reports and as we enter this field. If we're doing this report now, I fully, frankly expect public health staff from time to time dropping in on the Affordable Housing Committee office, on the Affordable Housing Committee's deliberations, some of the debates that we have in the community where councillors are really, they're put to the wall that we don't want a particular homeless shelter there. Public health staff should be there. If we're saying this is a public health priority, public health staff should participate in those real community fights that occur. I agree that the last point, that the gender equity lens is an important one. If you go to the table of contents, under the top section, it says at-risk populations. And years ago, we did notice that there was a special Indigenous peoples lens that we needed to put on this issue. And what was the policy outcome of that analysis? It was that, was it 20 or 25% of all new housing monies would be dedicated to affordable housing for our Indigenous community in Toronto. Great, we got the analysis right, we had a lens, we used that lens to inform policy, and that policy then ended up money being directed in that area. Similarly, around LGBT people, an analysis was developed. There are no shelters in that area, in the serving that community, those communities, and money was directed in that area. I think that at the end of the day, what Heather's comments help us to highlight is that that gender equity lens can lead to a different way of seeing the issue that will be followed up with some more dedicated money for women and girls. And I think that frankly is a good outcome. And so a gender equity lens, I think, is something that's helpful. That apostrophe S shouldn't be there. That apostrophe, just by the way, just so that we honor the Queen's English. So having said all that, this is a great report. And I am just delighted that as public health people, we are entering this very, very complicated area, and that we're doing it with, we're adding oomph to a debate that's out there in Toronto's community. Are there any other comments? Okay, so we're ready to vote on the items. Okay, 3 motions. Councillor Doucette, you see him there before you. Any desire to separate them out? Separate them out. Okay, all together, including staff recommendations. Okay, one for all for one. All in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried. Thank you very much for your input and your participation. Great. Okay, now we're on to the next item, which is 15.4, preventing injuries from wintertime slips and falls in Toronto. We have 3 DEPs. Anthony Quinn, Director of Public Affairs, Canadian Association of Retired Persons, Dylan Reed from Walk Toronto, and Diane Dyer, ABC Residents Association. So we'll start with Anthony Quinn. Are you here? Oh, there you are.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to appear here again before you. My name is Anthony Quinn. I'm the Director of Operations here for CARP, and I'm here to support the recommendations of the Acting Medical Officer of Health. You do not have to be any kind of expert to understand that seniors have more difficulty getting around the city when it snows. But what the experts do point to in the study is that seniors are most vulnerable to slips and falls, and that snow and ice are the second leading cause of falls among older adults. And we know that injuries leading from slips and falls can be catastrophic for seniors, who in many cases are not able to regain their mobility after sustaining common injuries such as broken hip, or suffering even graver outcomes as a result of traumatic brain injuries as a result of falling on ice. And studies show us that many seniors who fall, even if they're not injured, become afraid of falling. And that fear of falling causes them to be less active, which in turn causes them to become weaker and actually increases their chances of falling and sustaining an injury again. So those seniors who go out less in winter due to snow and ice are also at risk of a decline in health, with a related decline in physical activity and social isolation. Also telling in this report is that there is an inequality of snow removal services across Toronto, with some getting the royal treatment of 2 centimeters as a standard for clearing, while others have to wait for 8 centimeters to fall before clearing begins, if they get snow removed at all. So that's another another issue for the city to address right away. There's an inequality of safety based on geography, and that's just not acceptable. And if the city is looking for financial justification for clearing snow beyond their duty to provide equal services and access for residents, the Acting Medical Officer of Health's report highlights the $67 million that the city pays out in legal claims each year due to slip and falls, not to mention the cost to the economy accrued through hospital care and the untold dollars lost in productivity. It seems prudent and fiduciarily responsible for the city to address the issues raised by the Acting Medical Officer of Health and to improve the safety and accessibility of Toronto's sidewalks in winter. So I come to you today on behalf of our 40,000 CARP members in Toronto, and I ask you to take this important report to heart. We look forward to hearing back from Council, and our members will be paying attention to your actions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions? Councillor Doucette and then myself. Councillor Doucette.
Thank you very much. In the report on page 9, it says that we have over 400,000 older adults in Toronto. And Transportation Services indicate in 2016 that only 7,000 of them are receiving our snow clearing service. That's when we only clear the sidewalk. We don't let them in and out of their homes, but we allow them to look at a nice clean sidewalk. Does CARP promote this program through any of your newsletters, your emails or anything, so that so the residents know this service is available?
We have 4 CARP Toronto chapters who do keep their members up to date through electronic newsletters. We have chapters in downtown Core, in Etobicoke High Park, in Scarborough, and in North York. And that's one of the ways that we give our members up to date on the accessibility issues available to them through the city. But looking at a cleared sidewalk from your porch is something different. What we've instituted in some chapters are look-in services for seniors and encouraging neighbors to help their fellow residents who are unable to clear their own paths. But if the city is providing top-notch service to some and not to others, I think that's really a equity issue that you should all be looking at today.
Could I just make one suggestion, that you also put it in your newsletter, your hard copy newsletter you send out to us members every once in a while? Because I do find that some of my seniors don't have access to email, and therefore they wouldn't get the emails, which I also receive.
Happy to do that. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
A question for you. If you were sitting on this side,
Yes.
The staff recommendation is that we look at the city consider going down to 2 centimeters from the current 8 centimeters.
Yes.
And I can tell you that will be rigorously debated at council through the budget process. However, we have areas, and I'd be one of the wards, I think Councillor Doucette would be another, Councillor Cressy, I don't know about Carmichael Greb. We have areas of the city that aren't plowed, period, because they are more in the downtown or exclusively in the downtown, because there's no place to push the snow. If you push the snow against the cars, they damage the cars, and so we just don't do it. We just don't do it. To do it manually, if I'm not mistaken, the bill would be $7 million.
Okay?
So, if you had $1 million, if you had $7 million, would you go from 8 centimeters to 2 centimeters, or would you use that $7 million to provide equitable 8-inch service, 8 centimeter service throughout the city, recognizing that some would be done mechanically, some would be done manually? What's your priority?
The priority would be to have 2 centimeters for everyone across the city, I believe. And looking at your budgeting, I think the medical officer's report shows you where there's opportunities to find the money in reducing your legal liabilities and slip and fall claims. So if you can get the clearing down to 2 centimeters right across the city, and I think the report calls for further investigation into how that would reduce your liability claims. And if you can find ways to cut into that $67 million that you're paying out annually in slip and fall claims, that may be the way to fund 2 centimeters clearance for everyone right across the city.
Right. This is just back of envelope, but I would estimate that it would be, to get down to 2 centimeters everywhere in the city, it's got to be costing $20 million.
Okay, so that's about a third of the money you would save in slip and fall claims right now, according to this report.
Right.
Or potentially.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, our next deputant, unless there's further questions, is Dylan Reed, Walk Toronto. Hey, Dylan.
Thank you very much for having me. Good afternoon. My name is Dylan Reed. I'm speaking on behalf of Walk Toronto, which is a grassroots, all-volunteer advocacy group dedicated to making Toronto a better city for walking. Walk Toronto is very pleased that Toronto Public Health has prepared this report on the impact of wintertime slips and falls. Walk Toronto has been advocating for the importance of improving winter sidewalk snow clearing for several years and has identified slips and falls as one of the primary consequences of poor winter sidewalk snow clearing. Until now, however, we did not have any systematic research that we could point to in order to evaluate the full extent of this issue. This report, Preventing Injuries from Wintertime Slips and Falls in Toronto, provides the kind of systematic, evidence-based analysis that advocates, city staff, and politicians can use to develop improvements to Toronto's sidewalk winter maintenance practices. The report demonstrates that there is a clear correlation between winter conditions and increased slips and falls. It also shows that wintertime slips and falls create a significant cost to the city, both in terms of reducing the health and quality of life of those who suffer injuries, and in terms of financial impact on the city, for the province, and for the individuals involved. There's also an equity impact, in that the danger of slips and falls most strongly impacts people without cars, seniors, and people with mobility and visual disabilities. We'd also like to draw attention, as the previous deputant did, to the psychological impacts of slips and falls. And this is an impact that's reported by actually 2 of our steering committee members who have both suffered a slip and fall in the past few years. Anecdotal evidence from those who have suffered slips and falls suggests that a fall results in injury can have a lasting psychological impact, especially for those who are most vulnerable, such as people with disabilities and seniors. After suffering a fall, they may be reluctant to walk in winter conditions even after recovering their physical health. And this reluctance can have a detrimental effect on their physical and social health. This issue might be worthy of further study. Altogether, the report shows the urgency of continuing to improve Toronto's winter sidewalk maintenance. We strongly support the idea of establishing a 2 centimeter snowfall winter snow clearing threshold and for all sidewalks, including residential ones, which will be both safer and more consistent. We continue to urge the extension of municipal sidewalk snow clearing to older residential neighborhoods and are working with councillors to establish pilot projects to explore potential solutions. In the meantime, we strongly support expansion of the greatly underused shoveling service for seniors and disabled, better information about snow clearing responsibility, and improved bylaw enforcement. And Joey, feel free to ask me the same question. The good news is, the report shows that investing in improved winter sidewalk snow clearing and maintenance can have a significant positive effect. If the number of winter slips and falls were reduced, the city itself would save money on liability claims, provincial healthcare costs would be reduced, and the health of many individual citizens of Toronto would be improved, both through less injury and through greater confidence in walking during the winter. We strongly support the adoption and distribution of this report and the implementation of its recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions? Same question.
Just to remind myself, the question was basically how are we going to pay for this and what was more important?
Or in a world of limited resources, and where we're always triaging and prioritizing, and, you know, I'm in a ward, I think 3 of the 4 of us on this board are in wards where we don't even get 8 centimeters. We get nada, nothing, except the occasional person who has a program because they're a senior.
So I think there's 2 things to keep in mind. So the first is that the city actually contracts people for the whole winter. It has the equipment, it has people on hand ready to plow at all times. It's not that much more expensive, in terms of the 8 centimeters versus 2 centimeters, it's not that much more expensive for the city to simply get those people to get out more often, because they're already on contract and the equipment's already there. So moving from 8 centimeters to 2 centimeters in the residential snowplow zone would not necessarily be that much more expensive. And I think it would be well worth investigating how much, because I think it could make a huge difference. And the fact that there is these different thresholds is simply very confusing for people too. People in the suburbs who do get sidewalk snow plowing under certain conditions after 8 centimeters, they have no way of knowing whether the city is going to plow their sidewalk or not. I mean, they may not measure exactly. The city doesn't give any announcement of like, it's going to be 8 centimeters, we're going to plow, you don't need to worry about it. And then the other thing to keep in mind is that that's a 48-hour plow, so that gives 48 hours for people to walk over that snow, to trip over that snow, to not, you know, to slip on that snow, to compact that snow so that when the plows do come through, they're not as effective. So it's a very confusing situation and a very erratic situation. And so even where the city does supply residential sidewalk snow plowing, it's very erratic, and people really have no idea whether the city's going to clear their walks on it. So a lot of people probably do it themselves. Some people can't do it themselves, but they don't have any support. It's a very confusing situation. It'd be much simpler if the city simply said, we're going to plow at the same threshold every time, then everyone would know, and you'd have much better clearing. And if you look at the report, you'll see that there are actually quite a lot of slips and falls in the suburbs as well. So I mean, clearly that could be improved. For downtown, we dispute the idea that only handheld, it requires only, it can only be done by hand. For instance, I live near Carlaw Avenue. And Carlaw, at the top of Carlaw, is basically a typical local residential street with parking along one side. And then it becomes a collector road south of Riverdale. And because it's technically a collector, the city actually plows the whole thing. And they have no problem. I go there every winter, I walk by, and Carlaw, which looks exactly like my street and all the other streets in the pocket in Riverdale and the whole area, is plowed. And the other streets around it aren't. So I dispute the idea that, in fact, it's impossible to mechanically clear a lot of the downtown. What might be necessary is to have a certain amount of backup hand for very difficult situations. And we've been talking with transportation staff for the last 2.5 years, thinking about like how we could do this. We haven't come to any conclusions, but we've been talking about it. But certainly that seemed possible, that it's, you know, you could mechanically clear. And again, if you look north and south of Danforth, is again my area, the sidewalks are cleared north of the Danforth. They're not that different from the sidewalks south of the Danforth. They don't have, they're all monolithic. They don't have like boulevards. There's parking along them. Somehow they all get cleared. So again, so what we're proposing, and we're working with a couple of councillors on this, is to do pilot projects in a couple of locations with the city. It wouldn't be too expensive, and to see how those particular areas could get plowed mechanically in the current no-plow zone. To get a better sense of what the cost would be and what the potential solutions are.
Thank you, good answer. Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Dylan. Thank you. Appreciate all your good work, by the way. Last is Diane Dyer from ABC Residents Association. Welcome, Diane.
Yes, thank you. Mr. Chair, members of the board, thank you for this opportunity. ABC Residents Association, in case you don't know, is part of Ward 27, and our boundaries are Yonge, Bloor Street, Avenue Road, and the CPR tracks at Summerhill. So there are many, many pedestrians in this commercial and residential area. They shop, they visit, as well as those who live in our neighborhood. In condo and apartment buildings, houses. There are 2 senior residents, Belmont House and Hazelton Place, as well as Davin Hill, formerly Fellowship Towers, on the east side of Yonge Street. Pedestrians also go to a church, a library, hotels, and a school, Jesse Ketchum School, in the area. And I have to mention, a couple of years ago, I was walking up on the west side of the street in front of Jesse Ketchum in wintertime during the winter holiday. It was really icy, and I was panicking. I knew I couldn't walk on the road because Davenport and Bay is not a good street to walk on. So, I mean, this is an issue. I mean, clearing in front of schools in the wintertime when the kids are on holiday. We at ABC have long been concerned with pedestrian safety and have posted suggestions on our website, from obeying traffic signals, wearing reflective clothing at night, carrying a light source when walking dogs. There are a lot of dogs in our neighborhood, as well as clearing ice and snow. Well, given that the city does not send out staff, at least I don't think the city does, in the wintertime to look for icy sidewalks, it seems to be in large part the responsibility of pedestrians to report these icy sidewalks to the city. But I don't think a lot of the pedestrians or area residents are aware that they can report the icy sidewalks to the city to have the residents serve notice that they have to clear them. I was wondering, I mean, it's probably not possible, but wouldn't it be great if we could have some sort of reporting system from the mail carriers? Because they're the ones that use them 5 times a week. And they are not obligated to deliver the mail if the sidewalks are icy. But there's nothing in place that there's or any regulations to report on these icy sidewalks. So we think that the city should have intensive and frequent campaigns over the winter about clearing snow and treating ice, along with safety tips to managing ice and snow. Perhaps fines should be higher if sidewalks are not cleared within the 12 hours. I have a friend who's a senior in the neighborhood. She gets the snow cleared by the city, but she says it takes them so long to do it, but by the time they get there, the snow is packed down, it soon turns to ice. So if it's not done in a timely manner, it's rather a useless service. These city campaigns should be on social media, TV, radio, newspapers, on the city websites, the councilor's website, the councilor's newsletters. And also here's an opportunity for a public-private partnership with corporations, insurance companies, sport stores such as Sport Check, the Running Room. Runners seem to have a lot of safety gear in place, from flashing lights, reflective clothing, maybe even Canadian Tire. I mean, anybody that you can drag into helping advertise clearing ice and snow. And I was glad to see in the report on page 9 that there is this website about, Note My Treads, about safe snow boots. And I think, I mean, I have cleats, but if you have cleats, you know how difficult to put them on and take them off, and you cannot go inside. I was talking to a friend today who comes from the Ottawa area, and she has ordered from a shop in Ottawa, she now lives in Toronto, broom ball shoes and boots, because they play broom ball on the ice, and they have these boots, and she said she never slips on the ice. So maybe some sports shops can have these available. See. I think the city could also explore how other winter cities in Canada, or maybe the city already handles ice and snow in the wintertime. How does Iceland cope with this? How do the Scandinavian countries cope with this? I mean, let's not reinvent the wheel if somebody's already done it. With intensification and increased density, there are going to be more and more residents and pedestrians. We have a number of condos waiting to be built in the Yorkville area. And with climate change, weather is uncertain. There will probably be more snow and ice every winter. I mean, the polar vortex is damaged, as we have been told, the past couple of years. And most of us know at least one person who has fallen on ice in the wintertime and broken an arm, a leg, or a hip. So we urge the city to take action in as many ways as possible to keep us all safe. I'm going to put another hat on. Oops. As a member of the executive of the Toronto and Area Council of Women, which was founded in 1893, several days after the National Council of Women in Allen Gardens, I can support on behalf of this council the comments and recommendations of ABC Residents Association. So thank you very much for this opportunity.
Diane, very helpful comments. Any questions? Seeing none.
Good.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, are there any questions of staff? Councillor Carmichael Greb.
Yes, I just have a couple questions. What is the amount of money that it would cost to change the 8 centimeters to 2 centimeters? The additional cost in clearing the sidewalks that are already cleared?
I believe staff from Transportation Services are here, so they should answer that question.
Hi, I'm Jacqueline White. I'm Director with Transportation Services, and this is Rick Hilary with Transportation as well in road operations, so he'll help me out when I get in trouble. The additional cost for we currently do about 50% of the sidewalks that are mechanically cleared to 2 centimeters. To increase that to all of the mechanically cleared sidewalks to 2 centimeters would be another approximately $3 million.
Say that again. I just didn't. I didn't get the preamble to the 3 million.
So, you know who I am.
I was waiting
so
for the
I'll skip that
conclusion.
part.
Yeah.
Currently, about 50% of the sidewalks that are mechanically cleared are cleared to 2 centimeters. That started last season. And to increase that to 100% of the mechanically cleared sidewalks to 2 centimeters would be $3 million.
Okay. Were the slips and falls, the claims for slips and falls, are those on sidewalks that are cleared by the city, or is that, I know there's the chart, but are those sidewalks that are supposed to be cleared by residents who aren't cleared by residents?
Yeah, hi, I'm Jeff Madeley from Insurance and Risk Management. That data is citywide, involves both sets of responsibilities, city cleared sidewalks as well as resident obligations to clear sidewalks.
So what is the amount of claims for sidewalks that are mechanically cleared?
We don't have that breakdown right now.
Okay. And you mentioned that in the report that there are some other cities that clear all their sidewalks. What's the measurement that they clear at? It was Montreal and some other cities.
I'll refer that to Monica Campbell.
Yeah, thank you. We did do an assessment of multiple jurisdictions. What we could say is that there is great variability in terms of what the threshold is, how many centimeters of snow would have to fall. There's also great variability in terms of what amount of sidewalks in fact are cleared. Some of them will go down, I think, to 2 centimeters. Some of them are at 8 centimeters.
And do we know the amount of claims that they pay out for slips and falls in those cities?
We don't have that information.
Okay. Thank you.
Other questions? I have some. So how much of the city is mechanically cleared on a percentage basis? More or less?
There's 1,100 kilometers that are not cleared, and I think there's 7,100 in total. Is that the right number? So
Sorry, 1,100 are not cleared out of
And there's-
71,
just 7,100 kilometers of sidewalk.
oh, so 6,000 are, 1,000 are not.
Yes.
And that 1,100 that is not, how much would it cost to take that even to 8 centimeters?
So when we reviewed that in 2013-14, it was estimated to be about $10 million. And it
$10
would have
million
to all be
because it would all have to be done
hand crews, yeah.
manually with crews. What about the point that, and you know what, frankly, I have a few of them in my ward too, the car law example, where you have some that's arterial, which means there's no parking, I guess, or sometimes parking, versus neighborhood streets that do have parking, especially on one side.
So there's a number of criteria we use to determine whether it's physically possible to clear the sidewalk mechanically. And they include the width of the road, if it's less than 8 meters, if the sidewalk's less than 1.5 meters wide, if the sidewalk is immediately adjacent to the street, and if there's parking immediately adjacent to the sidewalk. So basically, if there's no place to put the snow between the road and the sidewalk, then we can't do it. And the other criteria is if there's obstructions, if there's a lot of obstructions. When there might be some sections within a street that you can clear, but if there's sections on the same street that we can't, it needs to be contiguous. So it's possible that there are sections that we can do that are connected to arterials. So car law may be one example where we actually are possible to do it.
So what's the department's view on equity? Equity, it seems to me, would say that before you go from 8 to 2, you should go at least to 8 for everybody.
It's a matter of whether we actually have equipment that can do it or not. We would love to be able to do it for everybody, but we don't have the equipment, and when there's obstructions on the sidewalks and the sidewalks are too narrow for the equipment and there's no place to put the snow, it's a matter of whether it's actually possible or not whether we want to be able to do it.
Okay, so the basic numbers are $10 million to go for that, basically a hand or a strongly physically cleared 1,100 kilometers, $3 million to go from 8 to 2, and then how much additional if you did everything down to 2 centimeters?
We don't even know because we don't have equipment that can do it.
Oh, no, a hand.
Oh, so
Or is $10 million to hand?
10 million is to do hand crews for all the section that isn't cleared at all.
Down to 2 centimeters.
Well, that would be with people with shovels, so it
To 2 centimeters as opposed to 8 centimeters. Is that correct?
when it's you're not asking the right question. Okay, right now, the areas that aren't cleared at all mechanically, we don't have a measurement for 8 centimeters or 2 centimeters. They would be cleared by hand with shovels.
Correct.
So essentially 2 centimeters then.
2 centimeters. So the total bill to have everybody across the city, according to, have the same standard, which means your snow is cleared on your sidewalk to the level of 2 centimeters, is $10 million plus $3 million.
Probably, yes, approximately.
Great, thank you.
Plus what we're paying already. That's in it.
That's right, that's the delta, the so-called delta, not the airline. Yep. Okay, anybody else, questions? Councillor Doucette?
How much are we spending right now on mechanical leaf pickup? You know where I'm going.
That is approximately, just in the Etobicoke section?
No, I mean the whole city. About
It's
$13
not-
million?
Yeah,
It's less than.
I know what it is in Etobicoke.
I'm not sure. I know in Etobicoke it's about 1.4 million.
Yeah. Okay, I was just trying to find you some money. Thank you.
Further questions? Lisa Levy?
I was just wondering, thanks for the report.
In terms of the free manual sidewalk snow clearing, does that happen at 2 centimeters? For older adults and people with disabilities?
The seniors program usually starts at 8 centimeters.
Yeah, and how many people access that program?
About 7,000 last
year.
So is
About
it
7,000.
widely known about? It's the first time I ever read about it.
It's about 7,000.
And
And
is it a program that's widely known about?
Yeah, it's very well advertised. Most of the seniors in word of mouth, they call in and, even if they have a question about it.
And they can just live in the household? Like, they don't have to own the premises, or? I know I could probably find out.
No, they'd have to live there, and there's a criteria, with age or disability that will go out and do it. And it takes us about 72 hours to get to.
So it would be the same for those, for those non-mechanically areas, if you were going to be doing manual, it still takes 72 hours?
It would take, again, it would depend on, you'd have to balance out your costs and how much the labor is and how much labor you throw at it.
Just, I bet a lot of, I know in a resident that I lived in, the next door neighbor is older, so you would shovel for them. A neighbor would probably get there faster.
Yeah, it would be. And we get a lot of comments too from people that don't like the service. They'd rather go do it themselves.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else for
Another 10
questions?
million.
Dr. Wong.
Thank you for the report. Just a question around social inequity. Is there any specific differences with snow plowing with regard to low-income neighborhoods versus neighborhoods of higher income? Because certainly low-income neighborhoods, seniors have much more difficulty getting out, and people are walking and taking public transportation as opposed to higher income neighborhoods. Do we make any adjustments for that?
No, I think what we're looking at is the geography in that former Toronto, former York, former East York, that they are not as planned a community as, say, the North York and the Etobicoke, and it just kind of turns out that way, just because of the geography and the smaller houses. People didn't have cars, lots are smaller, and it's just the history, how the city has evolved and built over the years.
Great, okay. Any further questions of staff? Okay, seeing none, take it into the board. I do have 2 motions. Very quick, just adding to number 1 part. To add clearing all sidewalks in all parts of the city, as you heard staff say. There's 1,100, is it kilometers or meters? 1,100 kilometers of sidewalks that are not cleared at all, unless you're part of a seniors program. And frankly, most of them, if you look at the dots where the accidents are, or where the incidents or the liability is, a lot of them are in the downtown area. You can see it from the map. And as staff was indicating, the only reason why they're not done is because of, frankly, historical geography and net new cost. So if there is new money to be had, I think some argument could be given to at least doing the areas where there's a lot of slips and falls, frankly, before you go to 2 centimeters everywhere, especially given that they're in the downtown area where a lot of people walk and a lot of people slip and fall. So, $13 million is a lot of money, and, I don't know if wearing my budget hat I could support it all like tomorrow, but if we are going to inch forward, if we have the 2 goals, which is get down to 2 centimeters and make sure that there's equitable service across the whole city, I think those are both important values to hold together. And then the last one, G, strengthening, clear your sidewalk and good where campaigns, we used to have this campaign called Be Nice, Clear Your Ice, and there were stickers and posters all over the place. And I'll tell you, as city councilors, we get so many complaints. I clear my snow every week, and that guy across the street, he never does it, and you guys never go after him or her or them. And that's they kind of got a point. And so sometimes if you just nudge your neighbor along a little bit, that sometimes helps. And there's nothing worse than, 5 neighbors doing it, and then you see the senior there, sometimes with their walker, and one person hasn't done it, and they get stuck. So campaigns to have good footwear and be nice, clear your ice, I think that's an important part of the puzzle. And that G is cheap. G is nothing. We can use existing resources because we have access to the TTC shelters, and we have access to the TTC buses and subway. We should be having campaigns to just be good neighbors. That's a good thing for Toronto to be doing. So those are my 2 motions that I'd like to add. Anybody else? Councillor Carmichael-Greb and Councillor Doucette.
I have sort of an interesting view on this because half my ward does receive sidewalk clearing and the other half doesn't. I have streets where half the street receives it, one side of the street receives it, other people. So once there's snow, I get calls because people are screaming at me, why does, Joe down the street get it and I don't? I think, all councillors should be putting in their newsletters and on social media, you can call 311 if your neighbor isn't clearing their sidewalks. I think residents really need to report if other neighbors aren't clearing their sidewalks, because that's how we find out about it, and we respond to it reactively. We don't go out and monitor the streets because there are just too many of them. But when I first started here, one of the first things I looked at was how do we make it equal? And from my understanding, this has been a very political debate over the last, I guess since amalgamation. But it is something that I think we need to be looking at in the city. We either do it or we don't, rather than half the people get it, half the people don't.
We're on the same page. Okay, anybody? Oh, Councillor Doucette and then Dr. Bowery.
Thank you very much. So yes, my hard copy newsletter is at the printers right now, and it's got in it anything seniors want to know, because not all seniors have email. And so twice a year, I'm able to reach every resident in my ward, and we always remind them they have to sign up annually. They don't all know that. They think I've signed up for my life. It's not. You have to sign up annually. I do encourage people to call 311 if we see sidewalks not cleared. I call 311 when I see sidewalks constantly not being cleared. And you know what? It works, because they then send out a crew who says to the guy or the girl, if you don't clean your sidewalk, we'll come back and we'll charge you. So it's very successful, but we've got to encourage residents to do that. One thing I would like to say is I've just noticed around my ward, we did have a resident slip and fall last year because, so you've got it's a corner lot, the ice and snow was melting, it melted onto the sidewalk, turned to ice, this resident came and slipped on the ramp, because we do the ramps to make our sidewalks accessible at intersections. So it encourages all the water to run off. So I'm really impressed. This intersection, since last year, has now been redone with all those little bubbles, whatever they are. They'll be fun in the summertime with no feet. You can use them as your, foot massage. Anyway, I'm hoping they will work. There's a lot of them going in around the neighborhood. I think they're wonderful. I'm really happy with that. The only areas of my ward I get sidewalk cleared is TTC stops and very steep hills. I have a lot of steep hills, but I also have a lot of streets where you've got a sidewalk and you've got a car. So one, there's nowhere to put the snow. Would be nice to have a dumpster at the end, a truck to put the snow into, but also you're very, very close. The sidewalks are narrow, and therefore if you bring the equipment we've got now, you'll just nick cars and everyone will be really upset at you. So yes, I'd love to see people come and clean these sidewalks with smaller machinery, because why does one area get it and another doesn't? And I am a hilly neighborhood, and we have a lot of people slipping. Not too many falls I see, but I can also see that I didn't realize that, I guess it's the Humber River where it does get the snow plowing, but the rest of it doesn't. So in this case, I'm lumped into downtown. Most cases, I'm lumped into Etobicoke. So never know where we're going on this one. But thank you for this report. I think it's good. I think the promotion is important. We're always telling neighbours, you've got to clear your ice. It's very important. And it's not just the seniors. A lot of residents have strollers. They can't get down the sidewalks, and therefore they go onto the street to get a safe passage, which is dangerous. So thank you for this. I support more education and more money.
Thank you. Dr. Bowery.
Just wanted to add a couple of things from the health perspective. This is the time of year that I put together a list of home visits that I need to do for the winter time, because there are increasing number of elderly patients of mine that just can't access our services during the winter. One, because they can't get out of their home safely, and two, they're just afraid, or they are victims of falls in the past and have lost confidence, have issues with depression and anxiety around being in public for a certain number of months, which inadvertently just decreases their quality of life. They're more isolated, are not accessing food necessarily. And subsequently, the just general health tends to decline. And we found that it's much better to actually go to patients at home. And interestingly, last winter wasn't so bad, but the winter before was the first time I had started doing this home visits for my patients, and I didn't realize how many sidewalks were not plowed, because I'm also mortally afraid of falling, being a new Canadian, in the wintertime. And one thing that I know has been being tracked, at least at the family health team at St. Mike's, is looking at access, but also how many adverse medical outcomes are happening as a result of poor access to health services. So, for example, elderly being admitted for pneumonias because they're actually not seeking health care in time because of various barriers. So if this helps, I think, the last thing is there are a couple of things Toronto Public Health is doing already in terms of educating caregivers and patients on falls prevention, and especially having a focus in the wintertime is something that I think the ActiveTO.ca website is really good for, and we, again, pushing that for patients to look at that. So more education and more awareness for sure, but safer sidewalks, I think, will help health outcomes in general from a clinical point of view.
Anybody else? Okay, do we need to, so there's just two motions there, or one motion with two parts? Okay, anybody else? All in favor of the amendment? Motion as amended, all in favor, opposed if any, that's carried. I'll take the lack of hand movement as consent. Okay, thank you. Okay, we have one item left, and that's the budget. So there's a public portion and a private portion. Thank you very much, transportation staff, for coming. You're always welcome to come back. Okay, so we have a presentation, Dr. Yaffe.
Okay, thank you very much. So I'm pleased to present to you 2017 operating budget. Next slide. Just a bit about public health. Actually, Toronto Public Health touches everyone in the city. Doesn't matter if you're expecting a baby, you're a senior, all ages, all stages of life. We are here to reduce health inequities and improve the health of the population. And this slide gives you a very high-level overview of the services we provide for everyone, and then some of the services we provide for every age and stage of life. I'm not going to go through them, but just to say that everyone depends on us. They may not realize it. The next slide gives you a high-level overview of the return on investment from public health services. And these are just a selection, of course. Immunizing children with measles, mumps, rubella vaccine saves $16 in healthcare costs for each child immunized. Car and booster seats save $40 in avoided medical costs. Introducing cleaner vehicles and fuels to reduce air pollution saves $4 in avoided health problems. Fluoridating drinking water results in $38 saved in dental care. Tobacco prevention programs save up to $20 in future healthcare costs. And early childhood development and healthcare save up to $9 in future spending on health, social, and justice services. This gives you an overview of the services we provide. It's what's called a program map we provide for the city, and it shows you the 6 key areas of our services, ranging from foundations, which is things like surveillance, program evaluation, population health assessment, chronic disease and injury prevention, family health, infectious diseases, environmental health, and emergency preparedness. So, going into our funding. Our total budget in 2016 is $244.8 million, and of that, just over 70% is in what we call cost-shared mandatory programs and services, which are cost-shared 75% provincially and 25% by the city. Then we have 2 programs that are funded 100% by the city, which totals 7% of our total budget. Low-income dental and the student nutrition program. Then we have about $48.5 million worth of 100% provincial funding for specific programs that make up 20% of our budget. And there are a variety of programs, including early childhood programs like Healthy Babies, Healthy Children, hearing, vision, speech and language screening, Healthy Smiles Ontario, which is dental for children, tobacco control and enforcement, communicable disease liaison unit, and the provincial AIDS and sexual health info line, and diabetes prevention program. This slide shows you the percentage budget approval, funding approval each year, comparing the province, what they have agreed to fund, which is the blue, versus what the city agrees to fund in the red over the last 5 years. And you can see that almost always the blue exceeds the red, i.e. the province is offering us more money than we can take. Toronto Public Health was identified in 2015 as one of the 8 underfunded health units in the province with respect to health equity. In 2016, we are again identified now as one of 10 underfunded health units. So in 2016, the province approved a 1.3% increase for Toronto Public Health for unmet needs. The city approved 0.6%. So we will be returning $773,000 of approved funding back to the province. This shows you the budget by funding source. Just over about 76% of our funding basically comes from the province, mostly for the cost-shared programs and for the 100% provincial programs. 17% of our funding comes from the city. And then we have the 2 100% city-funded programs, student nutrition and the city dental program. The next slide shows you what that money is used for. Approximately 86% of the money is used for delivery of services in the community. 75% of it is salaries and benefits. 7% is in partnerships for service with community groups. and 4% is for student nutrition program. 4% is for corporate overhead charges, and we have no choice in that. And only 10% is for admin, and this is like office management, leases, medical supplies, computer hardware and software, translation and interpretation services. If you recall the program map I showed you, this gives you the breakdown of the funding by the major service areas. So starting on the top left there with family health, going right, infectious disease, environmental health, emergency preparedness, foundations, and chronic disease and injury prevention. We have had to sustain budget reductions over the last number of years, and here's just a sample of them. We've absorbed inflation, approximately $922,000 since 2011. We've reduced our non-payroll base budget by approximately $2 million. We've reduced our budget in 2012 by 10%, losing 58 full-time equivalents and about $7.5 million. And in 2014, our gapping for payroll was increased from 4.8 to 5.8%. So now moving into the 2017 operating budget submission. As you know, all these city divisions, agencies, boards, and commissions were asked to make a budget submission that met the city's target of minus 2.6% net. So our submission did meet that target. 2.6 net is about $1.5 million. The base pressures from compensation of 1.9%, which is about 1.1 million net, which means we had to bring forward a reduction of 4.5%, or 2.6 million net. These reduction options unfortunately required service cuts to meet the target. The Budget Committee of the Board of Health requested that any savings we identified in cost-shared programs be reinvested in services that were not meeting the minimum Ontario public health standards. The Budget Committee of the Board met on October 21st, and the decisions from that meeting resulted in a net decrease of minus 0.02% net from the 2016 budget, without considering any increase in student nutrition, which is considered separately from the rest of our budget. Also noting that the new provincial funding that we found out about at the end of September for Healthy Smiles Ontario, which is 100% provincially funded, resulted in a city expense reduction of $530.4 thousand net. So that was some good news. Now, I don't expect people to read that, but there's lots of numbers up there. But bottom line is it's what the Budget Committee approved. It's a minus 0.02% reduction in net, excluding student nutrition, and it brings us to a budget of gross budget of $241.4 million, our city budget of $58.9. Now, this does include, as the Budget Committee requested, some reinvestment of savings in programs where we're not meeting minimum mandatory requirements as set out by the province in the Ontario Public Health Standards and other legislation under the Health Protection and Promotion Act and Immunization of School Pupils Act. So one enhancement was under Immunization of School Pupils Act, or ISPA, protecting children through immunization, one of the basics. One of the major things that we know prevents illness and is cost-effective and keeps people healthy. So the Board Budget Committee is recommending an increase of $600,000 or $150,000 net, which is a partial implementation of the enhancement that we've requested, so that we could actually assess the immunization of all students attending school in Toronto, as we are required to do. This starts with a letter to the parent or the child, if the child is 16 or older. And we go through a number of stages, and eventually, in a small number of cases, we do end up requiring the child to be suspended from school if they're not in compliance, and that will usually almost always results in compliance. So we have excellent compliance. In 2014, the province, the Ministry of Health, added 3 new mandatory vaccines. They added private school requirements and a new immunization information system, all of which are very resource intensive for us with no added resources. So at this point, we've only been able to assess immunization records for 1 cohort, the grade 2 students, in publicly funded schools. We do know that if we don't make sure kids are immunized, we will get cases, and they can be very serious for the children and their contacts, and it's also very expensive. We had a small measles outbreak in 2015, and it cost us estimated $500,000. That's not including healthcare costs. Next, food safety and safe water. Again, very basic public health, and the Budget Committee recommended that we, again, split the enhancement over 2017 and 2018. We know that public health inspections reduce conditions associated with foodborne illness. Nearly all the food that we eat or buy in Toronto comes from one of the 17,000 premises that we inspect. We also inspect about 1,700 pools and spas, and we're not meeting the minimum requirements. We did a report back in 2009 on foodborne illness. It was estimated that it costs something around $500 million a year in Toronto. A lot of cases are not reported, but actually it's estimated that 1 in every 6 people probably gets a case of foodborne illness every year. Next is the Toronto Urban Health Fund. This is previously approved by the Board and Council through the 2014 budget process. We're looking at year 3 of 5 years phased enhancement of funding for community agencies to address inflationary increases and enhance, in particular, the youth resiliency stream and Indigenous-led organizations. The next one is Rockcliffe Smythe, Community Health Officer. In July of this year, Council requested us to include funding for 1 community health officer in this community to support existing residents and residents of the new 731 Runnymede Road shelter in the 2017 budget submission. We do currently have a community health officer that works in this area. So at this point, the Budget Committee did not recommend this enhancement because we can provide these services within current staffing. However, the board, they do recommend that the MOH review the CHO services in this community 1 year after the shelter opens at Runnymede Road, so that this review takes place in time to increase this position if needed for the 2019 budget. So, getting to more into specifics, the Budget Committee recommended, here it is, you can see for the Immunization of School Pupils Act, food safety, the Toronto Urban Health Fund. These are the new and enhanced cost-shared services that are being recommended, totaling 13.5 FTEs, a net budget of $229,000. The next page is the requested enhancement to student nutrition, which, as I said, has traditionally been considered separate from the rest of the public health budget. And this is year 5 of a 6-year phased funding plan that had been approved by City Council. And the Budget Committee did recommend this enhancement for $2.1 million roughly. All this money goes toward food and only food for school programs, and it would add 48 new schools, and it would also increase the percentage of funding from the city for currently funded programs from about 15% to 18%. Note that 4 FTEs of staff that are cost-shared actually do support this program as well. The next slide is the Budget Committee's recommended reductions. There's a small reduction in the cost of food for student nutrition inflation because we had estimated a percentage increase that was higher than in fact it turned out to be, so that was good. 311 is the intake for the city, as you know, and we have found that the vast majority of calls taken by 311 for public health have to be transferred immediately to Toronto Health Connection because of confidentiality and privacy concerns. So it's not good customer service, and in fact, it's not adding any value. So we have been in discussions with 311 and with city management around this, and are looking to basically use 311 primarily for after-hours services. So there has been a small technical adjustment to this, and you'll have a revised attachment 2 in front of you, so that this reduction is taken as of April instead of January and annualized thereafter. So what we've managed to do is adjust our line-by-line review as well, so that the total reduction stays the same. And the last thing on that page is the price changes to recover full costs in the food handler training. Next slide is the reductions that were not recommended by the Budget Committee. Vector-borne disease program reduction. We do catch basin treatment with larvicide every year to help prevent West Nile virus. And we generally do 3 rounds of treatment, but we have funding, a small amount of funding for a 4th round if we need it. So the feeling was to keep that just in case. And we had put forward, if we had to meet the 2.6% reduction, we had put forward student nutrition, and that was not accepted. So there's that slide again with all those numbers. Basically, excluding student nutrition, the recommendation is a budget that achieves a 0.02% reduction in our net budget with no service impact. So now, for the remainder of the presentation, we'll have to go in camera.
Okay, I'm just wondering, when do you want to do questions? Do you want to do questions on the public portion now? Okay, are there any questions now? Sorry? Whatever's quicker, okay. So let's do the public questions now, just to see if there's any quick ones. Dr. Wong?
Dr. Yaffe, just regarding the provincial funding and the municipal funding, it's based on a 75-25 proportion. So if we cut the recommended 2.6%, do we lose 2.6% of provincial funding as well? Because it's based on how much municipal. So we actually, if it does, we are at risk of losing a lot more than 2.6% of the budget. Is that correct?
Well, yes and no. We have been asked to reduce the net budget, which is the budget the city pays. So we have 2 programs that are 100% funded by the city: dental treatment, student nutrition. So every dollar we cut of those programs achieves a cut for the city. For cost-shared programs, every dollar, there's only 25 cents of that dollar comes from the city. So we have to cut 4 times as much of cost-shared programs to achieve the same amount. Do you follow me? Yeah.
So basically, if we wanted to cut, say, down to the extra 2.6%, you can take, what is it, that amount, $700 or almost $800,000 from student nutrition, or you have to do 4 times that in a cost-shared program. So that would have been something like $3.2 million, which is a lot of people.
Yeah, but is that equitable across programs, that the city provides? Because we're so heavily provincially funded, and is there some kind of, something that the city might consider based on the funding formula? Because we stand to lose so much more by a 2.6% cut.
But we're not recommending it.
Yeah.
or the staff has not recommended it.
Thank you.
Okay, so why don't we go into camera to do just a little piece in camera, and we'll be back in a sec. Motion, this is the motion to go into camera. It's before you. All in favor, opposed if any, that's carried. Who needs to be here? Just the MOH? MOH? All the directors, okay, all the directors are allowed to be here. Mayor's staff, my staff. Legal can stay. Yeah, you're not going golfing yet, sister. You stay. Make sure we don't do anything illegal.
technical things, I'll put them on the screen, and Councillor Cressy has some.
Okay. Are we live? Great. The clerks do such a great job. Open doors and calling Bat Central.
Just one media. Let's give it 1 second.
Okay, ready to go. We have, we're now in public. There will be one motion to confirm the motion recommended in closed session. There's another technical one that the clerk has written out that just adds some words, I think cleans up some language. And another one that the clerk is advocating for that basically allows us to do an, what does that allow us to do?
The material's confidential.
Oh, keeps the materials confidential. Okay. And I'll speak in a sec, but anybody else to speak to the Budget Committee? Councillor Cressy.
Thank you, Chair. And I have a motion, if it can be put up the screen, which I'll speak to in a moment. So let me just make sure it can go up, and I'll speak to the specifics momentarily. First of all, I want to thank our staff in Toronto Public Health for months and months and months over the summer of work on the budget, as well as my fellow members of the Budget Committee. We had 5 of us who met many times working on the budget that's here before us. And I just want to let members of the committee know that we began with an overarching objective, or I believe we did, which was to ensure the health of Torontonians and to ensure that we had programs and services in place which would accomplish that. Now, that's the direction we used. The background to my motion here is that Council had asked us to look for up to 2.6% in savings so long as we didn't impact programs or services. We spent months looking for savings that would not impact programs and services, and we found that we could not meet that 2.6%, that it was not within us. But we were able to bring forward and find a budget that we collectively were able to support. I personally would have preferred an increase in this year's budget, but as we did our due diligence and our hard work, this is a budget that I think is worth supporting. But I do believe it is worth noting that while we passed this budget, that letting Budget Committee know that we did that hard work. We looked for those savings. They were not there. The only way we could have met that 2.6% target was by harming the health of Torontonians, and we weren't prepared to do that. I know the Toronto Public Library, in presenting a budget, did a similar thing, due diligence, hard work, and found we couldn't make that target, but we did our best. And so with that, I will be supporting this budget. I want to reiterate the thank you to Toronto Public Health staff for all their hard work and my fellow members of the subcommittee on the budget.
Thank you, Councillor Cressy. Any questions? Okay, I'll just add a few comments myself, and I want to continue the thanks that Councillor Cressy articulated, but I want to put some names to it. Shirley and Riaz, thank you very much. And Jan and Dr. Yaffe and all the senior management that I know worked very hard over the summertime on this. You know, it's just a bunch of papers with numbers on the one hand, but boy, did we ever sweat around trying to find that line that would protect the services that we want protected and that would try to give efficiencies to the city as well. We were able to, thanks partly or largely to new monies from the province, we were able to do that. On the 1.9% side of things, we weren't able to do it on the 2.6 side of things because it would have hurt the services that we offer. And we did this in dialogue with the budget chair, in dialogue with the mayor's office. So I think we're frankly in a pretty good place, that this is a budget that we can defend and defend strongly before the city's budget committee, and that process is about to start at the beginning of December. But I think we're in a good place, and we've done some good work, and I am frankly thankful to our budget committee, the 5-6 of us that met over the summertime. I think we did some good work, and we're even making advances on some important areas of public health, namely around the food inspection and the immunization, and soon it will also be, I'm hopeful, around student nutrition as well. So we've done some pretty good things here, and hats off to everyone for the good work that they've done. Anybody else? So we have Councillor Cressy's amendment before us. All in favor of that amendment? Opposed, if any? That carries. On the motions, these technical motions, do you need them? Okay, flash them up. Okay with it as a package? Yeah. All in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried. Motion to adjourn. All in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried. Thank you very much, everyone.